This special edition of our podcast may contain language and discussion of topics that are not suitable for all viewers.
I'm Sacramento County District Attorney Tin Ho. You're listening to our podcast, Off the Record, where we go beyond the headlines to share real case stories and give you a behind-the-scenes look. We'll dive into public safety topics and explore how our office is working to deliver justice, both in and out of the courtroom. Let's get started.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Off the Record podcast. This is a special feature where we're going to be talking about the consequences of driving under the influence of alcohol. I am the host for this episode. My name is Courtney Martin. I'm currently the lead deputy district attorney for our driving under the influence and driving under the influence of drugs misdemeanor prosecution, education, and outreach program. Funding for this podcast comes from a grant from the California Office of Traffic Safety through the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Like I said, today we're going to be talking about the consequences of driving under the influence. We are joined by several special guests here today. We're really pleased to have Patrick Dodson and Nancy Waller here. We're also joined by Deputy District Attorney Andrea Morris. They're going to be talking about a case that Andrea was assigned to prosecute. And as we get going here, I want you to just talk a little bit about yourselves, and Andy, also if you can tell us about your role in the office. Maybe we'll start with you, Patrick.
Okay. Again, Patrick Dodson. I'm a lifelong resident of the Bay Area. Married to my wife, Linda, of almost 45 years. Youngest of 6 siblings. Mike was my big brother. He was the best man at my wedding. He was the godfather to my child, and we miss him dearly.
Yeah. You just let yourself, Nancy. Yeah.
And I'm Nancy Waller. Mike was my brother. He was also my big brother by 11 months. So anyway, I'm married to my husband Ralph for 54 years, and we have 3 children and 5 grandchildren.
And where was Mike in the order of the kids?
Well, Mike was second and third. Mike was a twin.
Okay.
Our sister Sue and Mike were born, and like I say, 11 months later, I came along.
It sounds like a busy household.
It was a very busy household.
Yeah, and it sounds like you were all close through your adulthood and getting married, having kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we were.
And Mike and his twin sister Sue lived within 10 miles of each other here in Sacramento.
Yeah, that's great. Andrea, maybe you can tell us about your role in the office, and then we'll talk about this case.
I am a deputy district attorney. I am, as of today, in our adult sexual assault unit. I've been a prosecutor for a little over 10 years at this point. I came up through our normal course in the office. We started misdemeanors. I prosecuted misdemeanor DUIs, and then rotated to our felony teams, where I prosecuted DUIs on a felony level, along with lots of other felonies, anything from DUI, vehicle theft, attempted murder, and then I rotated to our career criminal major crimes assignment. In that assignment, I had the opportunity to work with victims and to hold people accountable for attempted murder, for shootings, robbery series, burglary series, murder with special circumstances. And we also, in that unit, we prosecuted what we call Watson murders, which are second-degree implied malice murders, which is where I met the Dodson family and was assigned to handle this case.
Yeah. And actually, before we really talk about the case, we want this to be about remembering Mike. Maybe you can tell us some of the things that made him special, some of the things that stand out about him when you think about him in his life.
Mm-hmm.
You want
me to go with it?
Yeah, okay.
Well, to describe Mike, I would say he was quiet-spoken, humble, also an adventurer. Mm-hmm. He thoroughly enjoyed life. Mm-hmm. Although he started working very early, he was about 12 when he started delivering papers, and from then on he worked. And he went into the Marines. Mm-hmm. and spent his time there, and then came out and then spent the rest of his work career as a surveyor. And but when he's not working, he was involved with skydiving for years, competitive skydiving.
He was an adventurer.
He was an adventurer, yes. He enjoyed life and the thrill of life. He and his fellow skydivers made a world record at one time, the largest star at that time. And he went skiing every winter, usually to Utah, and spent the winter skiing, water skiing. Then he got into cycling.
Yeah.
And he was just a great big brother.
Yeah. What stands out to you, Trey?
Yeah, just his dad. That Mike was an adventurer. He was a very active, vigorous man. He cycled 1,000 miles a month with Sacramento Wheelmen, where he was a very active participant. But the other side of Mike is that he was, in addition to being an adventurer, he's a very kind man. Very kind, very gentle. Friends to all of his neighbors. He had at his memorial service, we met people that he'd stayed in contact with as friends for over 50 years. And he was just a very kind, gentle man, the kind of man you want in your community, the kind of man you would like to have you as your neighbor or your friend.
Yeah. Andrew, what do you have to kind of add to this? I know you got to know Mike's family through this process.
Our job is difficult in the sense that we meet wonderful people like you under the worst of circumstances. That's what happens. And so you get to know the victim through who's left.
Yeah, absolutely. This case started in 2021, right? Maybe you can talk us through what happened.
On June 29th of 2021, Mike, and being the true adventurer that I now know through you that he was, got up and early in the morning, as the Sacramento Wheelmen often do, got up in the morning, met up with the group. It sounds like they had coffee and bagels as part of their routine ritual. And then they started out on their ride. And they would ride for hours. I mean, the Sacramento Wheelmen are a group of individuals who are adventurers, who are people who want to get out and enjoy the best that Sacramento has to offer. And so they started their ride, and they rode on the American River Bike Path, which is just that. It's a bike path. It is not for cars. It is a place where outdoor enthusiasts can go and enjoy our, mild temperatures on June mornings, and ride in what should be the comfort of a bike path.
Yeah, and maybe for people who don't know that area, or maybe even listening to this podcast and aren't from Sacramento, this is not like adjacent to a road or near a road. It is a park, basically, right?
Absolutely. It runs by the American River, or like in parts parallel to. And it's a beautiful, beautiful area with a lot of old oak trees, and it's a walking path, a pedestrian path. The only vehicles that are ever there are the park rangers. And it should be a place where people can go and let go in nature and feel a little bit apart from the city life. We have beautiful landscape in Sacramento, and this was an area that certainly displays that.
Yeah.
So he was riding with the wheelmen, as they often do. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when he was riding with a group of wheelmen, and they sort of ride in a kind of a formation. And he was at the back of that formation. And when they were riding on this bike path, what they didn't know, what Mike certainly didn't know, was that the defendant, Armando Moreno Rodriguez, got into a car that he bought, a car that he had no business being behind the wheel of. He had no valid driver's license because he was on probation for not one, for not two, but for 3 DUIs. Misdemeanor DUIs. He clearly had a major problem with alcohol, and bought this Audi 4-door black sedan, and he got on the road at a .27, and he drove through a yellow man gate that is designed to keep vehicles off of the bike path. and he drove for a period of time onto the bike path. And in fact, people were walking on the bike path and walking up on the levee, and they called to say, there's a car on the bike path. And that car is traveling too fast, basically to alert the rangers that something is wrong. Mm-hmm. And he approached the wheelman as they rounded a turn. The defendant in his car rounded the turn at the same time and struck Mike. Mm-hmm. And instead of stopping after he hit Mike, he kept going. And eventually his car became disabled down a ways from the initial point of impact.
So did law enforcement respond to that?
They did. So the Sacramento Park Rangers were on scene first. Mm-hmm. They did an incredible job trying to apprehend the defendant, to tend to Mike. Mm-hmm. They called 911 right away as quickly as they could. SAC PD responded. It's in their jurisdiction. And apprehended the defendant, and that's where the investigation started.
Yeah. You mentioned his blood alcohol content. You said it's a 0.27, right? I think maybe you can give some context to the listeners of what that really means.
Certainly. So impairment for everyone is different. People can be impaired, meaning they are unsafe to drive. They don't have control over their fine motor skills or any of their faculties at different levels. But the law in California, based on years and years, I should say decades of science, has recognized that everyone is impaired at a 0.08. And so in our laws, they reflect the science and show that, at a 0.08, you are under the influence of alcohol. So you have someone who's at a 0.07. That is quite a feat to get yourself to
0.27.
I'm sorry, yeah. 0.27. That is quite a feat to get yourself to a 0.27. That is so far above the legal limit. And is a contributing factor to just how much of a conscious disregard this defendant had to human life and to Mike.
Yeah. And for Patrick and Nancy, can you tell us about how you found out about what had happened? And as much as you want to share, maybe tell us how it's impacted your family.
Well, we found out on that day that Mike was in UC Davis Medical Center. He'd been injured. I don't think we realized until we arrived at the hospital how grave his condition was. He was in a coma, which he never regained consciousness from. His body was shattered. He had broken bones. He had lacerated internal organs. And it was shock. It was a sad, shocking experience for us.
Yes, it was hard to believe. Mike, like we said, it was such an adventure. How can he be now so broken, lying in the bed? But we still held on to hope. We knew that if he, would wake from this, that he would have a long recovery. But there was still hope. I think the first time I sort of felt like the hope was no longer there, we met with his neurologist in a group, and they indicated that since he had not woken yet, because, mind you, he fought for 30 days to live. He was a fighter, and he fought to live. And so this was about halfway through that, and they indicated that it did not look good for him to recover because how long he'd been in a coma. But then one of the doctors said, well, you never know. So he kind of held on to you never know. And there'd be times holding his hand, and it felt like he was squeezing my hand, but it's hard to know if it was conscious or not. So I held on that someday that he would wake, and his body was just too badly damaged. He couldn't survive, and after 30 days, that was all he could do, and he was gone.
Yeah. Andrea, you mentioned that the investigation started. And so that I would imagine is going on while Mike's family is going through this. Maybe you can walk us through that.
So when Mike was hit, that prompted a whole investigation by the Sacramento Police Department in conjunction in part with the park rangers. But Sacramento PD took over because it was obvious when they contacted the defendant that he was impaired. And later on, the jury got to see just how impaired he was because it was captured on Detective Moreland's body-worn camera. Detective Moreland did a wonderful job evaluating the defendant's level of impairment and capturing that, so that eventually the jury got to see really what was going on here.
There you go. Are you sick or injured at all?
No.
Okay, so what's in your mouth? Is that blood or anything? Do you have any blood on you? I don't know what's on your leg here.
Just an injury.
Okay, all right. Do your leg looks like you maybe have some cuts on your knees or something? Or do you feel hurt at all?
I just threw up on my own blood.
Okay, you threw up your own blood. Okay, all right. But you do know why you threw up?
That's embarrassing, yeah.
Well, why did you throw up?
'Cause I was drunk.
Oh, okay, all right. So then I asked, when was the last time you had a drink?
When I threw up,
Well, yeah, when was that?
like 3 months ago.
3 months ago? Okay.
I'm so sorry. That's so embarrassing.
It happens. All right, so are you sick or injured right
I
now?
don't want to get fired.
No, I'm not even worried about that right now, okay? Are you sick or injured?
Honestly,
Touching your eyelashes, and I didn't want that. Just keep your arms right by your sides, like by your pockets. Okay, thank you. All right, see my finger? Just follow with your eyes, but don't turn your head. It's going to go back and forth a couple times, okay?
Okay.
It's up here. Up here. There you go. Just continue to follow it back and forth, okay? Try to keep your feet in the same spot.
All right.
Okay, over here. Thank you. Don't turn your head, though.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Over here now. All the way over here. Try not to turn your head, though.
Sorry.
Okay, let's try that again. All the way over here. There you go. Over here. There you go. Almost done, okay? Can you put your left foot on the line, just like me?
My left.
Your left foot on the line, just like me? Okay, on the line, middle of the line.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay, and then your right foot in front of your left heel to toe, just like that. Okay? And make sure your heel and toes are touching, kind of like this, okay?
Well,
Can you do that? There you go. Put your arms down by your sides.
Okay.
And I won't, nope, fix your feet. No, you gotta do it like me, just like that.
Okay.
Okay? Okay? Can you straighten your feet out?
You know
No?
what?
Okay. All
I
right.
just had my coffee shop.
Okay. All right. So, stay in that position until I tell you to begin this test. Do you understand? Do you understand that?
I understand.
Okay. So when I tell you to begin, I want you to take 9 heel-to-toe steps down the line. You're going to turn 9.
steps?
Then I'll show you how to turn around, and then you're going to take 9 heel-to-toe steps back down the line, okay? Let me demonstrate for you.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
So you begin like this,
Okay.
and you're going to go
Yeah, I understand.
1,
Yeah.
2, all the way to 9.
Yeah.
When you get to the 9th step, you're going to turn by leaving your front foot on the line. Take a series of small steps with the other foot, just like this.
Okay. Do you want me to
Then-
do it in a straight line?
Then 9 heel-to-toe steps back. 1, 2, 3, all the way to 9. While you're doing the test, keep your arms by your sides. Count your steps out loud. Look at your feet. And once you begin the test, don't stop. Okay? Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah.
What's your question?
You guys got me fucked up.
I'm sorry, what?
Okay, I'll do it.
Okay. All right, do you have any questions for me about the test?
Yeah, that's illegal.
Okay. I'm sorry you feel that way.
That's what the California law is.
Okay. Do you not want to do the test?
It's illegal
Okay. Do you not want to do the test?
because I am not okay to do it because
When the defendant struck Mike, it was a very severe impact. And a bike that is built to be sturdy, is built to be rugged, to go on a rugged terrain, holding someone who is strong, who's fit, and who's an adventurer, was shattered. And so when they started this investigation, I think the detectives had hoped that Mike would pull through as well. But they had seen the photos, and they had their concerns that Mike wouldn't make it. And so they brought the case to our office. And so we had a decision to make that if Mike passed, would we charge this as second-degree implied malice murder? And ultimately, that's what happened. The defendant, in light of the aggravating factors associated with this case, in light of his conduct, his probation status, and what happened here, the fact that he was driving on a bike ban of all places where people are supposed to be safe, or he was driving without a driver's license, the decision was made after Mike passed that this would be charged as murder.
Okay. Tell us what happened in the court case.
So it took a while, as these cases often do, and I imagine it felt like an eternity for you, Pat and Nancy.
Was the defendant in custody during the case?
He was in custody. He was held at no bail, meaning he cannot post bail, given the danger that he posed to the community. So originally, the defendant was charged with gross vehicular manslaughter, as well as hit and run. And then when Mike passed, the charges reflected what had happened and changed to murder. And so the defendant was arraigned. And obviously, as his constitutional right, was appointed counsel. And then that started our end of things with the prosecution of the case. And so we went through prelim, and we went through trial.
Mm-hmm. And what was the outcome of the trial?
The jury came back the same day that they went out to deliberate, and the jury convicted on everything.
What kind of sentence did this carry? Tell us about that.
So murder in the second degree carries 15 to life sentence. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, the hit and run, as well as the misdemeanor driving on a suspended license. So currently the defendant is serving a life sentence.
Okay. I know Andrea has mentioned to me that your family was very involved in the court process, and she got to know you really well. What was the court process like for your family?
Well, it was a unique experience. Fortunately, none of us have had experience with the criminal justice system. So this is our first exposure. We really didn't know what to expect. Mm-hmm. Within 1-2 days, the district attorney's office reached out to us. Mm-hmm. Colette Brown was a victim advocate, and Andrea was the prosecutor in the case. Tried to lay out what the next steps would be as best they could, try to set some expectations for us about timing. As we learned more and more about the facts, I think the more anger we developed over what happened to Mike, and the more we hoped we would get some justice for what happened to him.
Yeah, the court couldn't have been more supportive of our family. I like Pat said, we didn't know what to expect, mm-hmm. and the support that we got was very, very important to us, and we knew that that even though they had never met Mike, that Andrea would do the best, and she did, to take us through the process and to do what she could to find justice for Mike.
Did both of you come to the trial?
Yeah, all of our siblings who could travel came to every hearing in the trial.
Yeah.
We tried to stay as involved as we could.
Yeah.
There were some real concerns we had. One, the fact that we were afraid he would get out on bail and possibly flee, and Andrea addressed that by no bail.
Yeah.
We were concerned that there may be a plea deal to move this case along faster. Mm-hmm. And again, she assured us that they would go for the maximum charges and the maximum sentence. So that made us feel like they were taking this very seriously. This just wasn't just a nameless victim that they were trying to move through the system.
Yeah.
So we greatly appreciated that.
Yeah. How did you feel about the eventual outcome and the sentence?
I was very pleased that the jury came back, like Andrea had said, very quickly. They understood, I think, I'm sure, how badly this had all come about, and or what had happened to Mike, and the chances that Mr. Rodriguez had to straighten his life out, to get some help, and he chose not to. And I think they saw that and returned the verdict that we had hoped.
Yeah.
Because I truly feel if he ever does get out, having done something like this, the mindset that this individual has, I'm sure he will ignore everything that has happened and be out there on the streets again.
Yeah. The cycling group was also involved in the court process, right?
Very much so. When I was first assigned to the case, I obviously got to meet Pat and Nancy and your family, but I also received letters and phone calls and emails from the Sacramento women. It's a very large group, a very close group, and they wrote their letters and just let me know how much of a member of the community and what a loved person Mike was. And so I think that's one of the challenges when we meet families, is that I can feel so often when families want to communicate this loss, and there's not the right words for it. And so for us, it's, we do our best to carry on and to do everything we can with what we have and with what the law is to bring that justice. And so you want to, hug people and hold them and tell them that we're going to get the right verdict, but you never know what a jury is going to do. And so all I can ever promise in any case, what any prosecutor can promise, is that we do our very best to pursue justice.
Yeah. I think this is probably a good time in these podcasts. I usually try to talk a little bit about the sentencing and DUIs, and Andrea's already mentioned some of it. And I think this case highlights the way these defendants move through our system. So when someone is charged with a first DUI, there is a mandatory minimum sentence of 2 days, and they're given a significant fines and fees. I've actually read that it is cheaper to take an Uber from Sacramento to Los Angeles than it is to pay the fines and fees associated with a first DUI. So we hope that acts as a deterrent to people, and a reminder that it's on every level better to get a ride, make a plan, to be safe. They're also required to do a class that can be anywhere from 3 months to 9 months. And then the sentences increase as someone has second and third DUI convictions. They're required to do a more significant class that lasts 18 months. And then if they have 3 prior DUIs, they're charged with a felony. They can face a prison sentence with that. And then, as Andrea talked about, if there is an injury or fatality, they'll be charged with a felony. And if it's a fatality, they can be charged with manslaughter or with implied malice murder, depending on the circumstances. And you're great at explaining this, Andy. Maybe you can tell us just in a little bit more detail what's required to look at a circumstance like this and say this is a murder case.
It's really fact specific. It's very dependent on what happened in the case as well as someone's prior history. Mm-hmm. So there's no hard rules or bright line tests for what qualifies as it, because the human condition is so complex and facts are so complex. But when you have a person who is on notice, mm-hmm. who is aware in a formal way what is known to all of us from a common sense perspective, that driving under the influence is dangerous to human life, and they've been told that over and over again. In Mr. Moreno Rodriguez's case, he was told 3 times mm-hmm. that driving under the influence is dangerous to human life. And when you do such a thing, you act with a conscious disregard, mm-hmm. that you don't care who is in your way or how they're impacted by your behavior. It's when you have someone like this who has, made a mistake over and over again, and you can't call it a mistake anymore. It becomes a decision. And that's what he did. Get behind the wheel and drink over and over and over again, and then drive. And so when that happens, we're not talking about vehicular manslaughter anymore. We're talking about murder.
And when you said that when someone has, in his case, he was told 3 times that this is dangerous to human life, is that literally told that, or is it just through the fact of being convicted? Speak to that.
No, he was literally told. So what we have in California, because we have acknowledged that driving under the influence is so dangerous, right? When you have a person who gets behind the wheel of a car, of a vehicle that is so heavy that can cause such intense trauma to people, the law has acknowledged that is dangerous. And so when a person pleads to a DUI or is convicted of a DUI misdemeanor or any DUI, they are given what's called a Watson advisement, where a judge, we call it Watson is sort of a colloquial term, a judge says...
It's based on a case, right?
It's based on a case.
Watson, yeah.
Right. It's based on a case that talks about what implied malice conscious disregard is. In standard practice in prosecution of DUIs, as well as specific to this case, the judge actually said to the defendant, you're going to hurt someone. You have to get this under control. We actually presented a transcript to the jury of the third plea where he was explicitly told by a court, by a judge, you cannot do this. And if you do, if you continue to drive while under the influence and display this conscious disregard that driving in that way does, you could be charged with murder. It was right there in the transcript.
So the jury got to see that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. As we wrap up, I want to hear a little bit more from Nancy and Patrick about just what do you want the community to know about DUIs, and just closing thoughts that you might have for listeners about prevention in this area.
My understanding is that there were close to 527 people that died for drugs. We're looking at 13,000 people that have been killed due to drunk driving. I would like to see those sentences, the government, the courts, be much stronger. Mr. Rodriguez, it was the 3rd DUI. That should have been a felony. He should have been in jail. He shouldn't have been out driving a car. Mike should still be alive.
Do you have anything to add?
I think I'd just add the impact that these decisions people make have is huge. I mean, it's impacted our family, will for the rest of our lives, and the lives of our children, our nieces and nephews. It's impacted Mike's wider community. He had hundreds of friends who were just shocked and saddened by this. And it's had a ripple effect that this individual's bad decisions made continues to this day. And the fact that he was such a violator of these laws, he could go out and obtain a car and get on the road and be absolutely intoxicated at 9 o'clock in the morning. Something is wrong that he was able to do that. And Nancy's right. Mike should still be here with us enjoying his life. He had years of good life stolen from him for no good reason at all.
Yeah, it's a 100% preventable crime.
Right.
Yes.
What closing thoughts do you have, Andy?
I think that's it, is that this is preventable. This tragedy is avoidable. And when people violate the law and they exercise this conscious disregard, prosecutors in our office and all across the state stand ready to hold people accountable and to try and obtain justice for Mike and for families like yours.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's really been a pleasure talking to you. I think you really honor Mike with being here and letting the community know about this topic. And Andrea, thanks for being here as well.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the work that you've done. We appreciate everything you did for our brother.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Off the Record. I hope this episode encourages you to stay informed and inspired. Follow us on social media for updates and behind-the-scenes content from our office. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next time for more stories that matter.